Even though we've been living with the pandemic for, almost a year now, there are still many unanswered questions around COVID-19. Some of them could carry consequences even after we've been vaccinated. So joining me now with more CTV science and technology specialist, Dan Riskin. Dan, always good to see you.
Good to see you. Good morning.
Okay, I have a bunch of questions for you. First one, there are differences in the way this virus presents itself. Some people, as we know, end up needing ventilators, while others don't show symptoms at all. What do we know so far that might help explain this?
Yeah, it's one of the things that's been so puzzling about this disease right from the get-go. I remember when it began, we were saying, don't worry about asymptomatic spread because it's, based on what we know from other coronaviruses and certainly from SARS 17 years ago, if you don't have symptoms, you're not spreading it. And that is totally wrong for this one. A lot of people get this and they show no symptoms whatsoever. And we know a couple things that correlate with the risk of having bad symptoms. One is obviously age. Another one is that men are at higher risk than women, people with pre-existing conditions. And it's a little bit confusing about why that is. It's possible that it's partly explained by partial immunity that people have from other coronaviruses, like a cold that they happen to have had. It could be differences in our immune systems, and why those differences exist or what could predict them is hard to say. It seems like for a lot of people, what goes wrong is that their immune system goes into overdrive and they drown in it. But this is one of the big questions that's really never been answered when it comes to this disease. And it's something that we definitely need the answer to because, this is not going to be the last pandemic we face.
Oh, great. It's estimated that, well, it's truth, right? It's estimated that about 10% of COVID patients have symptoms that can last for weeks or months after recovery. Dan, what are the going theories around that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's this thing called long COVID, which is the idea that you have this disease and it just never really goes away. And it hasn't been well defined because it's something that a lot of people are sort of having to advocate for themselves. And so we don't exactly have a good sense of what exactly it entails. But by some estimates, some 15% of people who get COVID-19 still have symptoms after a month, and 2% of people still have symptoms after 3 months. And so we don't exactly know why there are these differences among people. It doesn't necessarily correlate with how bad you had the disease. So some people who weren't in the ICU end up with long COVID. Some people who were in the ICU don't get long COVID. And so this is another big question about what the lasting effects of the illness are. And certainly for people who think they're done with it and who got better and think that they're just going to move on none the worse, there are some questions about whether this might correlate with other kinds of diseases. There's indirect evidence that Parkinson's risk might increase as the result of having had COVID-19. And that's the kind of thing that you really want a solid answer to, but we just don't have any yet.
And speaking of lasting, there's some cases where people continue to test positive, as we know, for the virus long after they've recovered, they feel normal. What do we know about the test and why that happens?
Yeah, well, we have a little bit better sense of that. I mean, remember that in the beginning of 2020, we did not have a way to test for whether it was this disease or something else. And we've come up with a whole bunch of different tools. And one of those is polymerase chain reaction, which takes a small amount of the viral RNA that's in somebody's nose. You take your Q-tip, you stick it way up there, you get a sample, and then that is replicated in the lab to make a huge pile of the stuff so you can test it. But that's such a sensitive test that it works even if the viral RNA wasn't in a functioning virus anymore. So say the virus, but you can imagine like a dead body that's strewn across the landscape of the inside of your face, and its RNA is spilled out, and it's not dangerous anymore, but that RNA is still there. That will give you a positive result because the test is so sensitive. So that's been one of the hurdles, is trying to figure out when a positive result doesn't really mean that the person is infectious anymore. Because really that's the question, is the person at risk of getting sick? Is the person at risk of spreading the disease? And so our answers give us our tests give us an imperfect answer to that at this stage.
Well, thanks for answering all those questions for us, Dan Riskin. We appreciate your time as always.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.